Hey everyone, John Doyle and Emily Gullikson from Optics, and we're going to do another video race of the day, our Derby previews. And this, you see the prices are getting higher, the stakes are getting higher. Arkansas Derby at Oaklawn on Saturday. Emily, this is a pretty interesting race, I would say.
It is, and we talked briefly before we hit record that both you and I are really not sold on anybody in this race. Obviously somebody's going to win, but yeah, we'll go through the race, kind of starting with the group of horses that have been running in the series here at Oaklawn Park, and then kind of break out into the new shooters, those horses that are kind of stepping up, and how they fit in for today's race.
Yeah, we were talking about the plow, but we got a red fit. We were talking about it's really, there's no edge for anyone really on the plot, no disadvantage either. So it's not telling us a lot. You could say maybe that the pace is going to look a little mild, but I mean, they're kind of bunched up. So it's going to be interesting to see how this kind of race unfolds, and I think what we could talk about is the horses. What do you want to talk about, the horses in the Rebel first, coming out of that series, or how do you want to?
Yeah, let's start there. And I mean, that kind of leads us into the pace as well, because you're starting with the number one, Kavad, who looks to be your clear kind of pace setter. He's been that way in the races. You can see that with the grid and the optics notes that are pulled up. Lone best of the speed. He wants to be fourthly placed. He's drawn on the rail today. That seems to be his game. Now the problem with him, and we've talked about this in each of those races, is that documented lack of finish. And you can even see that in the plot. He's a big circle. So even when he was given that lone last time out with the flow, still faltered. So as we talk about horses that don't really have a pace advantage, I think a lot of people will kind of look at this race like they did last time. Oh, he's got a pace advantage, and just he's just a little bit on the cheaper side. That lack of finish and the lack of speed figure progression, which tends to be a pattern with a lot of the horses that have been running in the Rebel Southwest.
Yeah, he's got to go extra distance today too. So
correct. Yes.
I have him like about 40 to 1 on my line, so that's where, because I really give him no chance to basically. Yeah, that Rebel. Talk about the Rebel a little bit. I mean, that race, and the number 2 was the other horse in that race, coming out of that race, Chasing Time, who ran poorly. Especially he was up to, fairly poorly. I mean, he's up to a pretty much close pace, slow pace. The winner was right up there too, right? Kind of sitting in the pocket. So he was in a good position. I don't know if it just he didn't fire that day or what it was, but expected better from him that day, and he didn't deliver.
I didn't, because I just, you look at his notes. I mean, he just another horse that really hasn't improved as far as speed figures. He was coming off that win where he had a perfect trip, free week. That race back on January 14th has not been a productive race. I mean, we can pull up the chart if you want, but I don't think any horses come out of that race and won. I don't even think any of the horses that have run out of that race have cracked at 85. So, I just, at this point, he just doesn't seem like much. He got the class test last out, faltered. So it's hard for me to really make a case for him in here. And I know he looks favorable on the plot, especially because he's next to We the People, which will be one of those horses that will probably take a lot of money in here. But I think it is flattered because of that trip to back.
Yeah. I mean, the Rebel was just a terrible race, in my opinion. I mean, it just never materialized. The horse that won, who's back in this race, the 5 was 75 to 1 when he won the race. Yeah, the only thing I would say, the horse is kind of, it looked like, from a work perspective, I looked at his raw works, looked like he's kind of on the improve a little bit. So, I would not bet this horse to win, but there's a possibility at a right price that this horse might be an exotic, maybe bottom of tries or supers for me. The 3 Barber Road, that was another horse coming out of that race. And, it looks like he was a little bit against the flow, but still, I just didn't like the way he was kind of, he looked like he should have won that race, I thought, and he didn't. I don't know. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I mean, I actually didn't really care for him that much in the Rebel. I just thought he'd kind of had some good setups in the past, and the overall concern with him is just he's a horse that hasn't been able to get faster, even even with some of those favorable trips and setups, I mean, he hasn't cracked a 90 yet. Where's that step forward going to come from? And he hasn't shown it yet. So I just, I can't get behind a horse like that. I mean, he's a good horse. He's honest. But as you mentioned, if those are softer fields, even when he had the thing his own way, just hasn't stepped up to the level he needs to be to run in a grade 1 stakes.
Yeah, and and of those horses come out of Rebel, he may get played a little bit because he looked like he was coming off coming against the race, the flow of the race. So I'm hoping that's the case. We'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, as far, going back to the plot, I mean, he's a horse that when you do look at the plot, looks like, he's a horse that's going to get a favorable trip, and he looks favorable, and that kind of tends to be the pattern with him, just as his past plots. So just kind of keep that in mind as far as, sort of being a short price underneath, certainly, but on top a little bit soft, especially as you mentioned, likely going to be the shortest price of that group.
Yeah, I don't like anyone coming out of the Rebel to win this race, but because I just think it was a bad race. And this is the horse that won it, and it was just like he won by default. He was on the rail. He was, in position. It looked like no one wanted to win that race, and he kind of just was there at the end. And I don't know. I really didn't like this horse because he came out of the Withers. I guess got to upgrade the Withers a little bit. Some horses have run pretty well coming out of that race, but still, his speed figures. I mean, he topped out at 88. He's improving, but still, I mean, he just looks slow.
Yeah, and he had a favorable trip last time. We pull out the plot, kind of see where he's at today. I mean, I don't think he had a great plot. Oh, he's done in quadrant 4. So if you just think, even going back to what was successful in the Rebel, that he was sitting like in that like pocket like trip. I mean, he was saving ground on the inside, was able to save ground all the way around, which really, really benefit him in that race shape, the place finisher being wide of that group. And it just doesn't seem like he has enough early speed in this race to kind of establish that kind of inside position that he would need to kind of get that sort of setup trip. And if he's really far back, then he's up against it from the snowflake and lower speed rate settings.
Yeah, good assessment. The other horse coming out, I think, was the 7, Ben Diesel. And I think of all the horses coming out of the race, this one probably I prefer the most, because I just thought his trip, he was wide. He just never seemed to get into the race. He seems to be working pretty well coming into this race, and he's at least he was kind of on the improve before that race. So maybe you can kind of forgive that race. Again, I'm going to like him more underneath than on top, but what do you think of him?
Yeah, I prefer him of that group as well, because I just think tactically and the way the race shapes have set up in these preps, they've really been against Ben Diesel the most. Now, he hasn't quite shown enough at the times that he's needed to, which is a concern, but you dueled against the flow in the Smarty Jones, so he was an upgrade from that. They took a slightly different tactic, bringing him off the pace in the Southwest, maybe wanted to see him a little bit closer, and then they really went from off the pace. So it's like, and we can see on the plot, he's kind of hovering that right on the y-axis between quad 1, quad 2. If they can put him into the race, he's on the outside. There's not a lot as the lower speed rate, lower contention, keep him forwardly placed, kind of tracking behind the 1. And he just, give him his race and let's see if he can, improve. Yeah. Like you said, he had that progress. So just in terms of trip, being a little bit more aggressive, this added ground could just, fall into a piece.
Yeah, I that's how I kind of rated those horses. So I think we covered everyone in the Rebel. Let's go back and let's look at the shipper from your neck of the woods. There's only not your neck of the woods, but what you cover, Santa Anita, and Doppelgangers coming out of the San Felipe right around second. What do you think? The one thing the one thing I'll say is what I noticed about the optics fig ranges in the California races were very low. Like you look at the optics fig range of this race is 92 to 80, 92 to 98. And you look 77, 79. That would just tell me that it's not facing the toughest competition.
No, they are smaller fields, but and it is definitely something I noticed and we'll bring up as well, but he did run above par in both of those races. So even though the optics figure range is low, he's been running. 91 is well above the range in both of those races, and 91's in here. It's not fast, but compared to this group, it's
Yeah.
right in there.
Yeah.
And he's got B minuses in graded stakes races, which, I mean, you really have a hard time finding that in anyone. That's the same as Barber Road. Uno, he had a B last out, but that was, kind of flow aided. I mean, Doppelganger, he kind of is who he is. At this point, I think you have to be treating him like a Bob Baffert horse. I don't know exactly when this transition was made, but what I do know is back on March 14th, he was still working in the Baffert saddle towel. That was his first work back after the San Felipe, and they did have the blinkers removed on that day. So he was working without blinkers. So that was, and he's blinkers off today. So that was something that had already been a motion in play before the barn change. And we know, Baffert pointing to this meet, these types of stakes races, I just kind of treat him that way. And you might get a better price on him because the name Baffert isn't attached, but it should be, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the only thing I find a little bit interesting with the Pratt change, he ends up on the outside horse. So that's just something to note. I mean, he rode him.
Well, I mean, and Velasquez has been riding first call for Baffert. So it's, it's probably, it could be just another one of those changes that they were planning on making anyways. I think they are going to ride this horse a lot more aggressive today than he has been in those last two starts. And he's behind a lone winner. But that move with the blinkers off, he was actually in front of the workmate. So I think, and it's just, again, based on the plot and that possible tactics change could be a lot closer to the pace today.
Yeah, because he doesn't plot all that great either.
He's right where Ben Diesel is.
Yeah, but you're going to get 3 times the price of Ben Diesel than you're going to get on Doppelganger. So,
slightly faster horse.
He's a faster horse. That's true. The filly is probably going to be the favorite in this race, I'm guessing. Jury's still out for me. I know she's run real well within her category, but I think this is a test. I'm not saying she can't do it. She looks capable. The distance ain't gonna be an issue with her, and she really finished well in that honeybee. So I think she's got a legitimate chance. She's fast enough to win this race. It's just going to be how she handled the competition, and I think she's good. She's gonna be up to it. She's definitely a contender.
Yeah. And exactly. I think that's what it's going to come down to. But as you pointed out, the optics figure range for Doppelganger, I think it does really come into play with Secret Oath here because those races haven't been as strong. And the same case is made. She's been running over par, so she's certainly worth getting this class test. And as an individual, she's got the B+, which suggests she can step up in class, and been consistent on speed figures, has the right running style. So yeah, I mean, just think as an individual, she is a worthy contender.
Yeah, it's again 9 of odds. The 8 is Cyberknife. This is the bred Cox horse. Comes out of the optional claim. A perfect trip, got flow, but still ran a huge figure. Was disappointing in the Lecomte, but we have some tactics minus here, kind of wide. Yeah, we were kind of like that race. Things could have shown better, and he did the next time out. So he's another horse that's a contender in this kind of race, a new shooter. Trying really, great. This is a grade 1. They're all trying grade 1 for the first time, but it's really kind of stepping up from the allowance company. So, but he looks capable. He looks like almost the fastest horse in the race, actually.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest test is going to be class, and this gets confusing because we see this a lot with horses that run fast speed figures, and then once they get into graded stakes races, they're just not the same. And maybe that's what happened to Cyberknife and the Lecomte. As far as, the speed figure last out, the effort being a B+. The horse that ran second in that race ran the Louisiana Derby last week. It was a horse that actually was dropped because I just visually just didn't seem like he was on that level, but got a lot of attention in the Louisiana Derby, just, as far as touts in handicapping, you know, people that thought he was kind of an up and coming type and didn't finish 7th, a C optics grade. So again, that just in terms of class, that is just a big question mark for me on Cyberknife.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I will add, just I think people will talk about this, and I don't think it's that big of a deal in this case, but Giroux riding Cyberknife where he'd been aboard We the People. And I'm really not putting that much stock into it because he just might have been committed to Cyberknife before they decided to run We the People in this race. So that just might be one of those decisions that had already been made instead of, you know, him deciding one over the other.
Right. And then the 9 is We the People, who was impressive last time, optional claimer, kind of coming back pretty quick, you know. That would be one concern a little bit, but like you said, Pratt ends up here. Kind of interesting. Little jockey manipulations. You read how you want to read them, but I think it's positive. And I think this horse is legitimate. He plots pretty well. I mean, he's kind of a big square. You know, he's kind of been in races that haven't had much pace. It's kind of going to be like this race, but he seemed to really finish well in both his races.
Yeah, I mean, he has kind of the same. He has the look to me of Zozo's, that horse last week for Brad Cox, where it was like a lightly raced horse that's going to step up to graded stakes. It really hadn't done anything wrong. He was good in his maiden special weight race. That race has been okay. Not anything crazy. It was against older. And then his allowance win, we see there's that weak comment. It was a weak field for the level. So even though he was impressive, I gave him a B, not a B plus. I didn't think it was, you know, I thought that just the way the field stacked up, that kind of flattered him a little bit more than you know, going kind of above and beyond. And as you mentioned, I mean, the timing is really interesting in here because this is his third start in a very short period of time. And, you know, the water's getting deeper, so to speak. So a talented individual, one that could be very much in underlay territory, I think probably going to be the second choice in this race. Or value is going to come into play as well.
Yeah, so I kind of did this in focus, and I may be adjusting it a little bit based on our conversation, but let me just bring it up because I think, again, it all comes down to price in this race, right? So the one that basically had the 40-1, like we said, and I actually will probably adjust the odds between the 2, 3, and the 7. I probably will lean more 7 a little bit, but I think those horses really don't have a good win chance. I mean, I put their win chance below like 8%, but I think they have a chance to be in the, one of them has a chance to be in the exotics. And I'm leaning that horse being the number 7, Ben Diesel. I struggled with, you know, the 4 big horses that I would say that are the contenders, the 4, the 8, 9, and the 6, Secret Oath. And I just didn't have a lot separating them, I'll be honest with you. I mean, so this is kind of what I did. And, you know, that's just, any thoughts? I mean, I just had a hard time making a line, but it's,
no, I think that's actually probably the right strategy is as far as, you know, math basically taking over, because it's probably one of those 4 horses, and whichever one's going off at the highest, as there's not much that separates them, that would be the play. I haven't looked at the full sequence yet, but if I was doing multi-race sequence, I'd probably want Secret Oath on there because I feel that she's the most established at this point, just as far as being over this course and form and things like that. What I would use, but as far as playing this race, I would, you know, kind of key off whichever one was there, and then Ben Diesel as well as sort of an exotic key.
Yeah, it's an interesting race. Either could come away saying there's no one coming out of this race. Definitely, right now, I would say it's not the strongest prep race, you know, grade 1 prep race that I think it's compared to what I think the others are going to, projecting what the Bluegrass and the Wood is going to be. I don't think we have any superstars in this race other than maybe the filly in her with females. But it's kind of a weak race to me a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah, and I wrote up as far as the circles and squares this week. I put like a little tinfoil hat on and did kind of a game theory as far as Secret Oath being this race. And I actually tweeted I thought it was a good spot for her to run in
Yeah,
this race, but
yeah.
there could be other benefits as far as defensiveness because let's say she wins this race, she pulls 100 points away from somebody else getting into the Derby. Now, Lucas has another horse at Ethereal Road who finished second in the Rebel, and they're going to the Bluegrass. So eliminating 100 points or whatever from a horse in this race could help that other horse who's actually sitting 12th on points right now. So it's who knows, but I do think it is kind of interesting. And Lucas is cagey. Maybe there's
I
some
like
play
it.
there.
I like it. I like it. So, that's the Arkansas Derby. I'm going to have this will be up with Race of the Day. So you'll be able to take a look at the focus. I'm not quite done with it yet, but I'm getting there. You can kind of get the idea of what we're trying to do with this. Again, those blue odds are the odds that those are focus odds. And so those are the odds what we think we would take if the horse as a win price, right? So, the two things you want to look at when you look at this is kind of the chance we give the horse, like the odds, so like the probability, like a Secret Oath is much less than like a 12-to-1 shot or a 40-to-1 shot. Even though a 40-to-1 shot, you can get 90-to-1, but that doesn't mean you play a 40-to-1 shot if it's 90-to-1. So just keep that in mind. But that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this. We'll continue with this series. And Emily, thanks for joining. This has been Optics EQ video race of the day, and it's the Arkansas Derby. So everyone have a great time out there.